Hello, my name is Natasha May, and I'd like to talk to you about a particular experience I had with the opportunity to make small changes when teaching a course I've taught before. So over the summer, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to teach a course that I taught a few years before called Math 1090, Introduction to Logic for Computer Science. I was excited to try some new things based on lessons learned over the year teaching remotely and new resources by the Teaching Commons. So this will be a two-part blog post, and part one is about an alternative assessment I tried. So I was inspired by the alternative assessment guides created by the Teaching Commons. My section of Math 1090 has 200 students, so the guide to large classroom assessments was the one I turned to. In addition to standard assessments for this course, where I create questions for students to solve, I thought I'd try something different, which would allow the students to be more creative and use higher order skills. Students often ask for additional practice problems to try in this particular course because the textbook is different from other textbooks they're used to. So in particular, other math textbooks they're used to, those with extensive exercises at the end of each section. So the textbook in Math 1090 instead has a handful of problems for each section at the end of the entire chapter, so fewer than they're used to. So the alternative assessment I introduced asked the students to create their own bank of practice problems. Each student was tasked with creating one question related to certain sections we covered in the course. Part one of the assignment was the creation, and they shared the questions they created in a discussion forum with all of their peers. To get full credit for part one, students needed to create a unique question. So they had to review all questions posted before them to ensure what they posted was different. They also could not post a question from the textbook. This new assessment ensured students had 200 additional practice problems to try, give or take. Moreover, these practice problems also required them to use evaluation skills because they had to determine whether the question as posed was indeed a valid question. So higher order thinking was required. Although I could have asked them to solve the question they created, instead, I wanted to add a reflective component to their question creation, which required them to describe their understanding of the course concepts and skills they used within their question. There were many opportunities in other assessments for me to assess their ability to solve problems related to the course learning outcomes, and I wanted to provide them with a different way to demonstrate their understanding of course concepts. The reflection formed part two of the assignment. So students were asked to describe why their question was a good practice problem, what knowledge and skills did it require, and what learning outcomes did it connect with. Essentially, they had to know how to solve the problem in order to be able to reflect on these types of questions. They could also consider what complexities did they design into their problem, or how did they design the question so it helped their peers build their confidence and learn the content and skills for the course. Surprisingly, students didn't complain that they didn't have solutions or answers to check their work after solving practice problems by other students. My optimistic self hopes that this is because this is a proof-based course and students recognized that self-assessment skills are required. In order to write a proof, one needs to convince themselves as well as others of their argument. However, there could be other reasons, like the textbook itself has no solutions provided for students to check their work, and so perhaps they didn't expect solutions to be provided, or maybe they didn't actually try to solve any of the practice problems in the bank they created. I did encourage them to do so on many occasions, and I let them know I would choose problems from the bank they created for their other assessments. Hence, another reason not to post a solution manual for the bank of practice problems they created, and probably the main reason I didn't receive any such request for solutions. I have mixed views related to this new type of assessment. I was lucky to have an amazing TA who was open to new teaching and learning experiences. Although they had never graded an assignment like this before, they were very willing. I provided them with a rubric to assist them, and they very carefully reviewed and assessed each submission. Given the individual nature of the assignment, as well as the reflective component, it did take longer to grade than a standard mathematics assignment. There were still ample hours for grading though, but this assessment took more grading hours than others. The success of this assignment really does rely on a marker grader open to this form of assessment and willing to learn. The students were also new to this type of assignment in a mathematics course anyway, and so I made sure to provide them with some sample reflections as well as the grading rubric to make the expectations clear. There were questions from students about the assignment, but the number of questions and amount of work to provide this preparatory material was comparable to other assessments. These factors may be some of the downsides of this assessment, but were still comparable to any assessment. The positive is that the results were phenomenal. The students came up with very creative questions and were able to write paragraphs of reflections connecting their question with the knowledge and skills in the course. It was a different way to assess their knowledge, but the creativity they demonstrated and the depth of the responses told me more about what they understood about the course than a standard assignment would. Moreover, they submitted part 1 a week before they submitted part 2. So I was able to review their questions and could see some of the misconceptions or misunderstandings that they had and could offer general feedback to help them correct their questions before submitting part 2. Part 1 was only graded for uniqueness, where part 2 was where both their question creation and reflection were graded. So if they were able to correct any errors they made when posting, this wouldn't count against their grade. This made the assessment both formative and summative. I believe it helped them learn and also demonstrated what they had learned.